At 9:12 a.m. inside a sleek glass mansion overlooking downtown Houston, Evelyn Adair was wiping down the edge of the walnut desk when the tension in the room shifted. William Oakley, billionaire dealmaker, was gripping his phone so tightly his knuckles blanched. The merger that kept his empire alive was collapsing in real time. 3 years of negotiations, gone because no one speaks their language, he muttered, voice cracking as another call went unanswered. When Evelyn reached to lower the TV volume to steady the room, he spun on her. "Keep your hands off my equipment," he snapped. "You're paid to clean, not interfere." The words cut, but she didn't move. Not this time. Because the next ring of his phone wasn't just urgent. It was final. Evelyn stepped forward, calm and unshaken. "Mr. Oakley," she said quietly, "what languages do you need?" He stared at her, stunned. "Why would you ask that?" And in that charged second, the class lines holding his world together began to crack. Like the video and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales for more powerful stories that stay with you. The moment William Oakley handed Evelyn the ringing phone, the entire mansion seemed to tighten around them. The steady hum of the air vents, the faint buzz of the city outside, even the light glancing off the glass walls, everything froze as Evelyn lifted the phone to her ear. Her voice, soft yet unwavering, filled the room with a tone William had never heard from her. It wasn't the quiet compliance he'd grown accustomed to. It was authority, steady, confident, unshaken by chaos. As she shifted effortlessly between languages, William watched in disbelief. The mansion, usually a symbol of his wealth and dominance, suddenly felt foreign to him. The power he thought he controlled wasn't in his hands anymore. It was standing in front of him, wearing a simple gray uniform, speaking with flawless precision to the very people who held the fate of his company. When she ended the call and told him the meeting was back on track, he didn't know whether to thank her or apologize. Pride and shame collided in his chest, but there was no time to sort through either. They had to leave immediately. Outside, the sun burned through the Houston haze as traffic surged along the freeway. Inside the car, Evelyn sat with quiet composure, looking out the window as though preparing herself not for a meeting, but for a reckoning long overdue. William kept glancing at her, searching for the right words. "Evelyn, who are you?" he finally asked, his voice shaking. She didn't look at him at first. Her hands rested neatly in her lap, fingers intertwined. "Someone who learned long ago that people rarely see what's right in front of them," she said. "Especially when they think they're looking down." The sentence landed with a weight that made William's throat tighten. He gripped the steering wheel harder, ashamed of the man he had been not just today, but for 3 years. At the Oakley corporate tower, the mood inside was frantic. Assistants rushed through hallways carrying folders. Executives whispered about delays, cultural missteps, and the possibility of total collapse. When Evelyn walked through the lobby, no one noticed her. They saw a uniform. They saw a maid. They didn't see the one person who could save them. But the moment she stepped into the executive suite, everything shifted. The Japanese advance team stood when she entered the room. Their translator froze mid-sentence. The senior executive's eyes widened with genuine surprise, then relief, as Evelyn bowed with perfect form. Her voice, fluent and respectful, smoothed the tension instantly. The men glanced at one another, astonished by how naturally she bridged the cultural gap that had nearly ended the merger. William watched as the room transformed. Partnerships he had struggled to build for years blossomed under Evelyn's guidance. Where he had stumbled, she moved with practiced grace. Where he hesitated, she spoke with clarity that commanded the room. But outside the conference room, resentment simmered. Some executives had noticed her uniform. A few whispered to each other, wondering why a maid was seated at the table. One in particular, Robert Lane, the head of strategic operations, glared with thinly veiled contempt. Lane had always been threatened by competence, especially when it came from someone he couldn't control. To him, Evelyn wasn't an asset. She was a disruption to the hierarchy he relied on. And as soon as William stepped out to take a call, Lane approached her with a forced smile. You're doing well, he said, although his voice strained. But I think you should let us handle the business details from here. We don't want to confuse the clients. Evelyn turned slowly, her posture dignified yet calm. Confuse them, she repeated. Lane's smile sharpened. They expect professionals, not household staff. Before Evelyn could respond, the lead Japanese executive, Mr. Nakamura, approached with a polite bow. Miss Adair, he said warmly, your explanation of the licensing clause was the clearest we have ever received. Lane's expression faltered. Nakamura continued, as if delivering a verdict. You will lead tomorrow's meeting, yes? Evelyn bowed respectfully. Lane, however, paled. His authority, the power he wielded through belittling those beneath him, was slipping away. Later that afternoon, the board gathered for an emergency discussion, and Lane seized the moment. He raised his voice, insisting that bringing Evelyn into the negotiation posed a risk to the company's reputation. She's not qualified to represent us, he argued. She's a maid. This is madness. Evelyn sat quietly at the far end of the table. Her eyes remained focused, not angry, not defensive, simply patient, as though she'd heard this too many times before. William entered mid-argument, overhearing Lane's final words. Qualified, William repeated, setting down his folder. Lane, she saved the deal you almost killed. Lane stiffened. I was protecting our image. Which image? William shot back. The one where you talk down to people whose intelligence exceeds yours. A few executives exchanged uneasy glances. Lane's jaw tightened. What exactly has she done? Lane demanded. William didn't answer with his own words. Instead, he projected Evelyn's credentials, real, undeniable, extraordinary, onto the wall. Diplomacy awards, letters from world leaders, photos from global summits, record of negotiations that shaped international policy. Gasps echoed around the table. Lane swallowed hard, his face draining of color. Gentlemen, William said, we've had one of the most qualified intercultural negotiators in the country cleaning our floors because people like you refuse to see her. Lane's mouth tightened. He tried to recover. This doesn't change the fact that she's been in a domestic role. Clients will judge. Nakamura stepped forward, having overheard everything through the cracked door. Mr. Lane, he said in flawless English, the only person we are judging is you. Silence detonated across the room. Nakamura continued, voice steady and cold. You insult the woman who has shown more respect, intelligence, and honor than your entire division. We will not negotiate with any team led by you. Lane stumbled back, panic showing in his eyes for the first time. William did not soften. Lane, you're suspended effective immediately. Security will escort you. Lane's voice cracked as he protested, but security was already at his side. As he was led out, he shot Evelyn a venomous glare, one last attempt at intimidation that had no power anymore. The merger meeting the next morning felt entirely different. Evelyn, dressed in a tailored navy suit, took her place at the table. The room welcomed her with nods and warm greetings. Her presence brought steadiness, clarity, and trust, a stark contrast to the chaos Lane had created. Throughout the tense 3-hour negotiation, she guided both sides through cultural nuances, technical details, and unspoken expectations. When disagreements flared, she softened them with thoughtful reframing. When a misunderstanding threatened to derail the discussion, she unraveled it with precision. Every executive in the room, even those who had doubted her, watched with awe. But the turning point came when Nakamura stood, bowing deeply. Miss Adair, he said, your guidance reflects the highest level of professional honor. We wish to proceed, with you as the cultural lead. The board members glanced at one another. The decision was unanimous. Evelyn wasn't just competent, she was indispensable. And yet, the most satisfying moment came not from praise, nor from the deal's revival, but from a notification that arrived on William's phone minutes later. A video had leaked. Security footage of Lane belittling Evelyn outside the conference room the previous day. His words, sharp, condescending, dripping with arrogance, played across the screen. Social media erupted. Investors called, demanding he be permanently removed. Employees celebrated his downfall in private group chats. The board voted unanimously for termination with cause. His stock options revoked. It wasn't revenge. It was accountability. And it was only the beginning. Evelyn didn't smile when she heard the news. She simply exhaled, as though releasing years of quiet endurance. The room watched her, sensing a shift none of them had words for. But the true consequence, the one Lane never saw coming, was still unfolding, waiting just beyond the doorway. And when that door opened, everything he thought he controlled would finally come undone. When the boardroom finally emptied, Evelyn stepped onto the balcony overlooking the city. The evening light brushed against the skyline, warm and steady, as if the world had quietly shifted into place. William joined her, no longer the frantic man from the mansion, but someone who had learned to see clearly. "You changed everything today," he said. Evelyn shook her head gently. "I only revealed what was already true. Sometimes it just takes the right moment for people to notice." For the first time, she felt the weight she had carried for years loosen, replaced by the calm certainty that her voice would never again be dismissed. The chaos, the doubt, the humiliation, none of it defined her now. What endured was her resilience, and the simple power of stepping into her own light. Behind them, the screen in the conference room still glowed with the new partnership agreement. Proof that truth, when finally seen, could rebuild what arrogance nearly destroyed. Evelyn closed the leather portfolio William had given her earlier, her name embossed across the cover. She held it to her side and allowed herself a small, steady smile. A maid's uniform had once been her armor. Now she carried something far stronger, her story. If this journey moved you, please like the video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales to help our community grow.